Hello, everybody. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about a character that I really like. Now, just for some background, I started thinking about this when I saw some videos on my YouTube feed saying, Keira Knightley says daughter can't watch certain Disney movies. Then I saw a bunch of criticism videos. Keira says her daughter can't watch Little Mermaid or Cinderella. While I certainly respect everyone can have an opinion, my own opinion here is that's a little ridiculous. But on the flip side of this, I saw critics saying her character in Pirates of the Caribbean, Elizabeth Swann, was a bad character because she sat around and waited for a man to save her. Not true. Not true at all, actually. So while I don't agree with Miss Knightley's conclusions, I also don't entirely agree with her critics either. And another thing to keep in mind here, if you really think that Elizabeth Swann is a bad character because she waits around for a man, remember that Kira is an actress. It's called acting. I'm gonna go on a whim here and say that Robert Englund isn't a pedophile serial killer in real life, even though he plays the part of one. So, using a previous role to undermine her opinion is aiming pretty low. But what I really wanted to talk about today is why I like Elizabeth Swann in Curse of the Black Pearl. I've heard more than once people say they liked her after she became useful in the other pirate films, and I think that's unfair. She's very useful in the first film. Just FYI, I loved Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl. The other movies are questionable. That first one, though, was incredible. It's one of my favorite movies, actually. So I'm only going to focus on this movie. Honestly, I'd be okay if the others didn't exist. So, was Elizabeth really a bad character in the first movie? And is she a bad example to girls watching? I like to point out here early on that Keira Knightley kind of summed up Elizabeth's character when she said in an interview, she's a 21st century girl trapped in an 18th century world. I think that's actually very accurate. So let's look into her character a bit. First of all, from the beginning of the movie, we get that her interests are not always conventional, what with her fascination with pirates and all. When she grows up, we understand she's not just a flitty girl obsessed with love and romance either. I mean, sure, she's probably thought about it, and there's some tension between her and Will, but she also doesn't want to marry Will because he's so stiff, and doesn't like the idea of marrying Norrington because she's got no feelings for him. What I'm saying here is she's not blindly jumping into relationships. She also openly criticizes her society's norms while not being able to breathe in a corset and then going to shoot the man who just saved her life. The girl has obviously got standards and she's doing the best she can with them in kind of a backwards world. But where I think she really shows resourcefulness is when the Black Pearl comes to Port Royal. Captain Barbossa and his crew, of course, come because they sense the gold calling to them. Now, a criticism I've heard about Elizabeth is that she should have never stolen the gold from Will in the first place. First of all, she was trying to save his life because she thought he would be accused of piracy. And secondly, well, when characters make mistakes, that makes them more interesting. In that first movie, every character did stuff that didn't always work in their favor. How did trying to trade Will for a ship work out for you, Jack? How did bargaining for your girlfriend's freedom with pirates work out for you, Will? And how did tying bootstraps to a cannon and throwing him in the sea work out for you, Barbossa? My point is people are imperfect and maybe don't think of consequences in the moment. First off, Elizabeth tells her maid to hide in the chaos and sends her to the fort. The chase scene we get is kind of fun as Elizabeth hits the pirates with bed warmers and whatnot, and it's even kind of funny when she tries to grab the swords off the walls to fight and fails miserably, complete with a change in music. But what I think is admirable is her fast thinking, even if it did result in her being captured. She was clearly resourceful enough to know the pirates' code to begin with and understand her right to invoke parley. Now I know what all the Elizabeth haters are thinking here. Ha! Was she resourceful? She got herself captured, the stupid ninny. True, true. But she also went in hopes of getting the pirates away from her city, and she did. Yes, she was kidnapped, but they left her people alone, so she actually accomplished quite a big feat. Also, it would be unrealistic if Elizabeth outsmarted the pirates in that scene. She's new to this kind of trickery. It's not that she's dumb, but that she's out of her element, and Barbossa was clever and knew how to twist words. And this is where these critics call her character out because she had to wait for a man to save her. First of all, she wasn't planning on being captured. Second of all, I don't think she cared who came to save her. Even if her maid had come and rescued her, she would have been grateful. She needed help, and calling her out for being captured is kind of dumb. If you were captured by pirates, you'd want help. Next, I'm not really sure what her other option was. Actually, she did try to help herself. She stabbed Barbossa in the heart at dinner. Yeah, he brings up a good point when he says to her, "What's her next plan?" But what I'm getting at here is she didn't just sit around either. And don't get me started on people who mock her for losing it in the presence of skeleton pirates. That has nothing to do with women being written as weak. Holy crap, I don't care what's in between your legs. That crap would be horrifying. Any sane person would lose it at the sight of skeleton pirates, especially skeleton pirates tormenting you out at the middle of sea where there's literally no escape. Well, we all know that she does eventually get rescued by Will, and then she gets marooned, and then she escapes, and then she helps Will, and then they finally admit their feelings for one another. I'd like to point out here that even though she's got every right to be traumatized by what she's seen, she still acts very defiant to Barbossa when her blood doesn't lift the curse. Also, she shows her resourcefulness yet again on the island with Jack. Here's the deal. Elizabeth's strength comes in the fact that she's different than pirates. Her thinking is different. I know Jack managed to escape the island last time, but what were the chances he'd escape again? It could have been weeks before more rum runners came to that island, and Will would have been dead. They escaped their fate because Elizabeth went against what a pirate would traditionally do in that situation. She was aware of her resources. She used Jack's shortcomings against him, which I'm not mad about, seeing as it saved their lives, and created a signal for the Royal Navy. I'd also like to point out here that she selflessly decides to marry Norrington because she wants to save Will. She's got some trust issues with Jack, but really, can you blame her? He's not exactly always trustworthy. To the people who say that she just waited for a man, I say you clearly didn't watch the second half of the movie. The roles were obviously switched here. Now Will is in distress, and he's got to wait for Elizabeth to save him. And that doesn't mean that Will is an incapable loser. All it means is this: people need people. We all need help from time to time, and there's nothing wrong with that. The fight that ensues, I think, is a fun one because, again, the writers were aware of Elizabeth's situation, but they could still make her very useful. Elizabeth didn't know how to sword fight. Why would she? But she used that candle as a weapon, and she and Will even worked together to put the bomb in that pirate's stomach, which I thought was pretty clever. Again, her cleverness is what helps not only her, but the good pirates as well. I also didn't even touch on how she called the pirates out for leaving Jack behind, and even though she got no support from them, her being stubborn and going off on her own. It would have been really easy for her to give up after being locked in her room by Norrington's men, and then her rousing speech being dismissed. She's clearly brave and will stop at nothing to do what she believes is right. So while I certainly disagree with Keira Knightley's comments concerning Disney princesses, I also disagree with her critics and those who think Elizabeth was a useless damsel in distress in the first Pirates of the Caribbean. I say screw that. I think she's great. I think she's a wonderful role model for little girls in that movie, and even boys for that matter. Being clever, resourceful, and sticking to your guns are good attributes for any gender to have. Also, this is more on a personal level, but I like that she was feminine and wore pretty dresses because I like pretty dresses. With that being said, thank you for listening to my rant.